Hey everybody, Texas Stroker here, Lance's Performance Shop, LoneStarMopars.com. Saturday evening, end of May. Hard to believe here. I thought I was going to have a full free Saturday in the shop again, and then late Friday, like we were thinking of taking off early. Freight truck called. Thought it would have delivered on Monday since it didn't come. And this was like, he showed up like a little after 5. And then I wound up getting stuck at work till 7:30, and then I had to meet a customer at noon today. So that kind of took the sales out of that one. I'm hoping tomorrow is relatively free. But I thought, you know what, before I make a sandwich, see the end of the Knicks and Pacers, Game 6 back in Indy, I figured I'd go ahead and crank this out. This is something I actually ordered Memorial Day. Either really late Sunday night, really late Monday night, one of those two. Probably late Monday, now I think about it, and luckily got the stuff Thursday, so very happy with it. I think we're gonna throw this down though first, because it's kind of part of the story, alright? So, you're thinking like, that is a beautiful sight to behold. What am I looking at? Well, this has been in a U.S. General over there, and we slowly, I'm talking like clearance, sale, clearance, free freight, clearance, I need, I'm $6 away from $100 in the sticker pack, blah, blah, blah. Over time, we built out a complete set of Gedore half-inch drive, 12-point sockets. At the time I did this, I was like, man, these Gedore sockets are so good. They have like the little band of knurling, and my big knock, in my perfect world, they would be oriented with Gedore, reading left to right, top to bottom, right, instead of inverted and reading correctly. Minor thing, I love the look of them, the feel of them, they performed very well. Really, what kind of sold me on the Gedore sockets was a dirt cheap pickup, half-inch drive, foam tray. In fact, that would actually be really good for comparisons here in a second. That's where I really started to like their sockets, and I was thinking like, okay, hey, I've got the Gedore half-inch metric 6-point set, and, hey, I've got the big expandable Gedore. I think that was my first extendable German ratchet. And I was like, man, this just kind of makes sense to do Gedore for my half-inch. At the time, I was like, leaning Stahlwille, and I was building out there, like, aviation spec. I was like, yeah, this is cool. And I was doing the half-inch metric. And then kind of what throws me off every time is half-inch, any shallow German insert company of choice. I don't care if it's Hazet, Stahlwille, Gedore. They're all, like, really, really competitively priced in the shallows, okay? You go to Koken, and their shallows are really competitively priced. You come in and go to the deeps from Koken, and they're really competitively priced, right? I always tell you, Koken and Proto kind of, you can't go wrong. You want US-made socketry, Proto, that's kind of the best bang for the buck. Great quality, very low price, hits both metrics. Japanese equivalent of that, in my opinion, is Koken. Again, very hard to find, at least readily available in the North American U.S. marketplace. Japanese sockets that are of that quality at that low of a price point. So Koken and Proto kind of over here. Now, in terms of shallows, okay, the German companies typically, even your higher end Hazet Stahlwille price-wise, slot in well below the tool trucks, right? And you're thinking like, oh yeah, this is great. And then you go to their deeps, okay, and we go from like, oh man, what do we want to do? Do we want Proto, Koken, Gedore, Stahlwille, Hazet, all pretty good bargains here in shallow land. You go to the deeps, and good freaking lord. Now you go from like, hey, these German shallow sockets have been really good to me. I think I'm going to get the deeps. Well, get ready for some sticker shock, because it ain't like Proto and Koken where the price points are kind of just, elevated and maintained. No. You're like going into Snap-on territory most of the time, and that's just insane. To Snap-on's credit, their prices are exorbitantly high for deep and shallow. There's like a consistency there. There's no shock factor that comes with it. You're like, dang, that's expensive. And then you go to the deep, and you're like, dang, that's expensive. With Gedore, with Hazet, with Stahlwille, you're like, man, you know, what a great steel. These seem phenomenal. And then you get to them, you're like, dang, snap-on territory, right? And Proto and Koken, again, particularly in the deeps, I challenge you to find anything of the quality for the price points. Especially Koken, frequently through DRPD or Koken themselves, USA, you can get like 20-25%. It's not uncommon. Proto, you can typically get, you know, 15 to 25%, no issue. And, you know, prices on Proto vary wildly. Sometimes you can find something that doesn't have a discount that's cheaper. Just shop around how sketchy of a site, how, you know, how much you want to take the risk of buying from somewhere you've never heard of, type of a thing. But this kind of had that dampening effect, right? Like, this is design, this is half-inch pegs, and you're thinking, like, what are these sockets upside down over here? 6-point? No, they're 12-point, and they are 3/8 drive, okay? And dadgum, Milwaukee Fastback. I did that just for storage, kind of fill it out. These down here would like populate quarter, 5/16, you know, so on and so forth. They don't really fit until you get to the half-inch peg. And obviously I haven't built it out past 15/16 because that's the size that's important to me. But just like the half-inch, they are 12-point. You're thinking like, man, you should get the Gedore. You know what? Give me like, I'm going to stay with you. Step over here, talk a little bit louder. And, I gotta pull the keys to get this one. This, I don't know if this has ever made an appearance on camera, but I love the thing. I think this whole thing was like $79, and I figured it was like going to be some fake scam, and no, it was not. It's epic, okay? This is kind of where I was like, oh dang, these L-Boxxes, this foam, this thing is legit, okay? So if I haphazardly set that there, everything's cascading down behind me. Also, this is where I discovered like their extensions are legit. They're kind of like a wobble fix type of a thing. But this is metric. It's 6-point. This has seen a lot of use, believe it or not. The sockets clean up on Gedore. Ridiculous. I don't know what it is about the way they do them. But if you look at this, the only sockets... I probably have put SAE on here now, but like you can tell, like that anvil has seen some stuff. Like this is, I've had this quite a while. It's been great. What would be a frequently used size? I can't see the top numbers. We'll go with this 18 probably. You just can't tell. Like the sockets, I don't know what it is about Gedore, but they just clean up. Okay. So that, and then the Gedore breaker bar was kind of like a segue off of this sort of behind the scene thing, and you're thinking like, dude, you should totally get that in SE. Okay, I've got it. Here's what you're thinking, and believe you me, I probably had the same thought. When you hear it, it was like my like, oh, I'm a genius moment, right? So I like the Gedore sockets. You like the Gedore half-inch. You've got some Gedore half-inch. You've got their 6 points. You rave about them. 12-point in the front, 6-point in the back, right? Here's the problem, and this is what sucks. With Koken, kind of their standard sockets, I don't really have this problem, but you get to the Z series, I'm talking super tight tolerances, super short, you know, the fancier finish out, everything like that. You're like, man, yeah, I have a set of, you know, 3/8 semi-deeps in the Z series. I love them. Here's the problem. They do that in metric. To the heart's content, everything you can think of, SAE has nothing. Go ahead, get your Koken catalog out. Every order, I'm like, hey, you know, they have that comment suggestion box. I'm like, we need Z-Series stuff in SAE. Will it work? I don't know. We've gotten lucky with some stuff. It's worth a shot, in my opinion. But my thought was, like, man, those deeps are insane. And it's like, okay, let's think about this. There are certain instances in half-inch drive where I really, really prefer a deep socket, but I've got extensions. I could make do. Just build it out. 6-point and, man, all these techs all at one time. 6-point and 12-point type of a thing, right? And that's what I was going to do. But Gedore, to the best of my knowledge, Stahlwille, to the best of my knowledge, and Hazet, to the best of my knowledge, and I've tried to figure this out. I really have. I think I've even asked people. I know I've asked Colin about it. No one's really sure, but SAE, you would think, you know, quarter, I kind of get the logic of some companies just doing, like Hazet makes a 6-point SAE. I know because we've got them over there on the smart rail. I think of the logic there is like you deal with such small heads on the fasteners for the most part, like, 7/16, half, 9/16, that's fine, make it 12-point. But the smaller stuff, it's probably a thing where people are like, ooh, don't want to round that over. And, I don't know of many 12-point fasteners themselves that size. Square stock, always an option. But again, you don't really see much of that tiny. So you can, like, okay, yeah, I guess 6 points, fine there. 3/8, you'd think, okay, 12 and 6. Sometimes the German companies just... it's 12-point or bust for SAE, and a lot of times they do not offer a deep SAE, even though it's only 12-point. So it sort of, long story short, puts a damper on what I'm trying to do with something like this, right? And so I've had this in there, and it's kind of been like a sad eyesore, like I know, like, man, this is what I wanted to do, and I can't because it doesn't exist. And to the credit of the German tool companies, I get it. I'm sitting over here requesting that they, set something up and get the tooling all in place and all that for something I don't know that they would sell much of. They wouldn't be able to run it in like huge batches unless they have like some outside contract type of a thing or deals with distributors, that are going to like stock all of the stuff they're going to make. And, you think, well, tool up for a limited run. It's like, well, yeah, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes costs there. And with the SAE and everyone over here just kind of bending the knee and like, oh, okay, fine, there's stuff like that's supposed to be SAE, like NEMA motors and whatnot, and like they're slipping in met, and it's like, what? Really? No. Panels. They're like Siemens, and they're slipping in, like little posi drives on their switches, and I'm like, none of these old electricians are going to have anything that's posi drive, maybe new age, but like the old dudes, that have had the country running just fine for decades now, no one's going to have that, and they're not going to want to buy it. They're going to be really pissed off and retire and not train the young ones, right? So you run into that, and I don't know that it'll ever happen. I can't really blame them. There's not like a marketplace. I could go in and be super into dusters and make... I've had this exact conversation with like aftermarket companies at big car shows, and it's like, hey, why don't you make A-pillars, for 70 to 76 A-bodies, $8 and change. And they're like, oh, those A-body guys are straight to your face. They'll say, oh, A-body guys aren't going to pay for that. They're too cheap. And it's like, well, there's like nothing left. Like you can find some in decent shape, but you like look at them wrong and they just flake and shed from the sun over the course of 50 years now, When I started trying to get those made, it was like 30 years in the sun. So it's one of those types of a deals. I can't really fault them, but it sort of puts me at a point where it's like, dadgum, what do I do here? And what I decided to do, it's kind of a cop-out, but, maybe at some point, maybe KC Tool has a few odds and ends of Gedore half-inch deeps that they can't sell and they go on clearance. Guess who's probably going to snatch that up? This guy. Okay. If I can get those deep sockets, they're like $45 a piece for like, $12. I'm there. But I don't know if that'll ever happen. And if it doesn't, what do? I decided I got the half-inch. I've got the 3/8. Get quarter, right? Ernst socket boss it. 12-point, quarter, 3/8, half from Gedore. Go to town, right? Park it in one of the boxes, and we're sort of set. We can like maybe pair it with some Gedore L-Boxx stuff or something as we slowly build it up. And then of course, since this time, I've sort of like had change of, as I've used things more and more real world, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm kind of liking this. And then some prices have changed, like Hazet is significantly cheaper, price-wise than it was. Granted, all that may change, like tomorrow, June 1st, come to think of it. But, like from when I started buying German tools to now, like Hazet has kind of like come down a lot. And Gedore was always like, woo, way down here, Gedore NWS. And then it's like Stahlwille, and then it's like Hazet's way over here, in the orbit if you squint right through the telescope. It's like come way down, and it's kind of like in line with this stuff. And like, oh, I don't want to go into all the socketry preferences and whatnot, but being cheap and thrifty and still trying to do something cool and functional that'll be serviceable, I'm thinking quarter, 3/8, half Gedore SAE, all right? And all these are going to go away. Get off of this, go to an Ernst Socket Boss, and this is what we've done in the meantime. We have from Proto, part number J54110. If I drop this down, you're going to see right there, this is a 1/2-inch socket set. 15 piece. Anyone know the size range there? You'll find out if you don't know. 6 points, as always, made in the USA, down in Fort Worth. A good 6-hour jaunt from me or so. You get the spring steel rail. You get the spring steel clips. And you get the bag of sockets all rolling up against each other, not protected. It's industrial, no one cares. They'll be fine, don't worry. Oh, that was so sad. All the Torx drivers just fell in there. But this is what I have. It's the bag of Proto sockets, okay? This thing would be typical retail on a good day, like $170. It's $169.99, if I'm not mistaken. You know me, I don't pay that. We shop around, we get lower prices, we stack discounts on it. Put a 20% on this thing, and we picked this up for $136. And you're thinking like, man, that's kind of spendy. Look at Koken. The Koken was a way better deal, you idiot. Here's the thing with the Koken 1/2-inch. While I love them, and I have them, and have nothing bad to say, their set, I want to say, is like 10 pieces. I also think it stops either 7/8 or 15/16, something like that. And my apologies for all the people that always tell me every once in a blue moon there's like 3 or 4 people that show up and they're like, oh, the sound of the packaging, I hate it. Not sure what I can do for you. I'll try my best. But right here, the Proto set, I said 15 pieces. What does that do? It does this. It does the MTS friction peg. It gives you a super comprehensive range of 1/2-inch drive sockets, all right? At work, it's kind of, I'm not going to lie, there's so much quarter 20 stuff. The 7/16 is nice to have, especially when it's like seized and rusted, and it's honestly just easier if I break it off. And 1/2-inch drive is great for that. Okay. Past that, like half, I think that's a fair spot to start, right? 7/16, 3/8, you're probably just going to break stuff. But again, you might be wanting to do that. That might be easier than sitting there and trying to salvage stuff, especially nylocks or something, right? So, a lot of sets, you know, you're going to stop, what, maybe up through 3/4, sometimes 7/8. 15/16 hugely important to me, especially at work, again, because tons and tons and tons of 5/8 hardware. And then here at the house, 1-inch for you K&N filter nut people. Okay, 1 1/8 is a huge deal because 3/4 hardware, right? 1 1/4, just nice to kind of have around. So, the downside to this that really sucks, you're thinking like, oh wow, you know, 1/16, 16th, 16th. You're like, wait, 1 1/8, that would be 1 inch and 2/16. This would be 1 inch and 4/16. I bet that Proto set has the middle ground, the 16th between these two, doesn't it? And it totally does. That's your 1 inch and 3/16. And you just kind of have to set that off to the side. Again, that's the beauty of Ernst, right? You can kind of fully customize it. This something, a socket, I can't think of a time. I'm sure I've used it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I dug around in my old red Craftsman box, I think I have one of these like taped up a little bit, and I use it to drive in selector shaft seals. I'm thinking 1 and 3/16 is the socket I used for that. Could be mistaken. But one of them is like a perfect fit. It's insane. However, I recently at work had to start jacking with this. This is a 30 millimeter socket or wrench that's required. But guess what I don't have at work until recently? That's right, metric stuff, especially in 1/2-inch drive. I had like little stuff, you know, to do batteries on Fords, 8 and 10 mil stuff for the, you know, terminals and the hold down. This right here, check it out. Now my 12-point did it. Okay, this fits pretty dadgum good. 1 and 3/16. Again, I walked on the Mack truck and I'm like, dude, what is 1 and 3/16 in metric? And I kind of deduced it was 30, and he pulled it up and he's like, yeah, it's 30, man. I had to go buy 30mm sockets, you know, but inch and 3/16 got me through that little bind there after, you know, the time I had to use Cobras on one of these. Because this is a socket cap, which is 17, which is also insane and something I didn't have. But so yeah, inch and 3/16, don't just chuck it, you never know. Great for seal driving, and it interchanges with a 30mm if you're old school SAE, you know, and you have to ever, heaven forbid, run into metric stuff, right? So insanely comprehensive 3/8 to inch and a quarter with inch and 3/16 included. With Koken, the price is better, but it's significantly, like if you buy the set, their railed set, it's going to be 10 piece, and I want to say it's through 7/8. Don't hold me to that. And the good news is they make them all, like, so you can totally fill this out with Koken. You can get the inch and 3/16 I think with Koken even. Sometimes they do stop, you know, it's just like a set point, and it's odd because I think in 3/8 you can get a 1-inch shallow but not a 1-inch deep. There's a couple of quirks there, and that's in their standard line. But with Proto, old school industrial, I've got years and years of experience with Proto. I know it, I trust it. It's made in Texas, it's made in America, and it, by all means and purposes, is a freaking bargain. Okay, so that's going to go there. And if you think like, yeah, I know this guy, 12 point, right? No, because these are here. Like, as much as I would love to just, you know, ooh, look, let's build a snap-on box and let's make a Mac box, and here's Proto, and you know, even though Mac and Proto basically the same thing, here's a Gedore. That's sort of like an end archival collectionist goal, I guess, you know, you stay single, don't have some crazy lady in your life. Maybe it happens at some point, you know. But with this, and at these prices, we went ahead and we went with Proto's J5 4103. Some of you, if you're thinking, hey, does that happen to be a 1/2-inch drive, 6-point deep socket set ranging from 3/8 to inch and a quarter? It totally does. And apparently these were sitting on the shelf just waiting for me for just over a year. You can see the Proto date code there of May 6th, 2024. If we open it up, what do we have? That's what we have. Deep sockets. And as I mentioned, you know, there's like 2 or 3 of you that actively leave comments every once in a while. It's not often, because it's almost always we're unboxing something, and say, man, I hate that sound, you know, you should never have that packaging back there by me, you know, and, you know, that's kind of trivial, but hey, you know, I read the comments, I know what people are saying, so you know what I'm gonna do for you? Like, and there's probably way more people annoyed by it, but again, like, very few people, like tons of people watch, like 1/10 of them, if you're really lucky, you know, like the video, like actually physically like it. Tons of people might like it, you know, but like just a handful of them. Similarly, you know, there's probably like a ton of people that, you know, dislike the video, but only a small percentage of those people take the time to hit the thumbs down. So I'm going to assume that even though some of you don't say it, you know, whether you just don't interact at all or you just graciously like ignoring it, I'll go ahead and open that bag off camera. 50-50, good balance, right? And you guessed it, the payoff here is going to be seeing this built out fully, front to back Proto. I will add this. This would completely, like, in that box, that US General down there, 1/4, 6-point, deep and shallow. It's like a hodgepodge of like Wright, SK, and Koken. I think Heiko even on like an 1/8 inch or something weird. 3/8 is primarily SK with some Wright, and I think Koken, but primarily SK. And then 1/2 inch now, we didn't have 6-point deep because I practice what I preach, and generally when I'm using this socket right here, it would not be chrome. It would be impact, right? I'm using it on an impact, whether it's air or cordless, something this large, it's usually an impact. Downside, if you compared Proto to Proto, you know, impact to Chromie, this is going to be thinner, okay? It's going to go. You might have a situation, maybe it's a control arm, and this socket, you know, you got your chromes down there, you know, you just did sway bars, now you're going to, you know, pull off the control arm. This might slide on and clear, so you're like, okay, let me go grab the impact real quick, this is going to be a boogered up deal. and you get it, and you got your little short extension or anvil or whatever to get in there. You got your equivalent impact socket, and guess what? You got interference. It's not going on to the fastener because it doesn't clear. That's where either A thin-walled impact comes in, or B, a chromie with a breaker bar, or, you know, just cautiously running. Hand not present in case the chrome chips. The socket, right? So that builds that out. Now, I have thought, especially since work, right? The work cart is very, very, very heavily Proto Mac, right? Just like I said here, especially at work, if I'm doing half-inch, it's like almost always impact related, right? So that's why I run 15/16. I'm not joking when I say I use 15/16 sockets on 3/8 ratchet all the time. Impact, cordless. I guess just cordless ratchet. Sometimes on the little 3/8 impact gun. Sometimes on quarter hex with an adapter. But all the freaking time I run big, like probably should be running half-inch, but I don't, 3/8 stuff by hand for various reasons. I have considered building this set and then taking it to work and then coming in. It's been a long time since I've used a Williams socket. I was intrigued by that. Part of me wants to kind of go Wright, you know, for the house stuff, just to differentiate it. Part of me says, well, screw it, you know, if you got Proto everywhere, it just interchanges. Like if I blow up a 15/16 at work, I've got one at home, I just rob it. Vice versa as well. But it's just all up in the air right now, you know, and at some point in time, if German companies do it and we change course, and then I just send these off to work, you know. So it's really, truly up in the air. I've loved having these here. I've enjoyed seeing them. I hate seeing that vacant back row and knowing that those are 3/8 drive, but we're going to rectify that, get those off to the side, set up elsewhere, and we're going to come in. You're going to see this beautiful thing populated. Then we will do our fitment checks and our socket comparison. So give me 1 second. You won't have to listen to the packaging, and prepare for the visual greatness of an MTS friction peg with a fully complete set of Proto half-inch drive 6-point made in America sockets. Alright, are you ready for the big reveal? First off, just a reminder, discount code Lone Star saves you 20% on Alpha Vibe gloves. Again, to make nothing of that, it's there for your convenience, and this is here for your enjoyment. It is absolutely glorious to look at. We got some stuff we've got to move. Didn't even try to frame this prior to setting up here. And I got to tell you, it has been a long time since I've seen a half-inch Proto Chromie that was like properly chromed and just completely faded down, right? The other thing I notice is I think the finish out on the deeps is significantly better than these half-inch shallows. Like, you kind of, we'll just grab the biggest one. You kind of see it looks like flash rusting or something, but you think, oh, that's not terrible. Well, look at this. This is like immaculate compared to this. Like, this is like, what? That should have been discounted if they're capable of that, right? Most Proto I get usually does look like this. Note, I was just bragging about the Gedore sockets prior to starting. One of the things that kind of concerned me, and I had this recently in a, I never know when I'm going to release these videos, but I assume that one would come first. So the quarter drive G2 icon, I was like, man, this Proto is not really fitting well. And like it did not, it seemed like, you know, either the anvil is too small or the broached square drive is like too big, or a combination of the two, and it just kind of like rips off really easily, like way too easily. And I've noticed on these, like the Gedores were like insanely snug on these pegs, and these are just, it's almost not even like a friction hold, it's just like a placeholder, if that makes sense to you. Instead of being, you know, kind of friction fit, it's like, it's just there, it's a peg, right? Kind of like a Hansen tray or something. So I don't know if they've just worn, or if the tolerances on the Gedore are just that much insane. So 3/4 Gedore shallow, we're going to come to the Proto. That just basically glides. I mean, there is a little bit, you can tell there's something there. I can't like bend it this way, but no resistance to speak of. That's not terrible. Some of these were way more notable. This definitely does grip a bit more, on my opinion, with the Gedore. But since that's kind of where we came, let's check and compare. I'm going to say they are eerily close. Again, this is 6-point versus 12. You kind of get an idea here of the design differences. You got full chrome, polished chrome, you've got satin chrome, you've got the dividing line, you've got this sort of necked down and necked up, you've got the knurling here, you got nothing on the Proto. Max, you get a little bit of ribbing, it's nothing insane, but Proto, pretty thin for a 6-point. Generally, that's one of the advantages of going 12, is you get just a little bit thinner. These Gedores fit fasteners tight, like really tight. That's a good thing, but it could also be a very bad thing, where these might go over gunk and grime real easy. You might have to literally get out a scraper or a whiz wheel or something on the end of a drill to get the Gedore to seat, or of course hammer them on. But less effort would be required, I've noticed, particularly versus the Gedore. Let's see here, we're gonna come in. I grabbed a Wright because, again, in that 3/8 set, this is 3/8 that we built out, that's primarily SK, old stock SK. This always seemed like a really generously deep 3/8 drive socket. So here it is versus the Proto 1/2 inch, and yeah. So 3/8 Wright is almost as deep as this. Now, some people love this, some people hate this. Wright and Proto, both kind of heavily industrial, at least in my viewpoints. This Wright, look down that well. If you had a nut, you know, on a stud, we're going to say it just runs down and down and down. Maybe then, you know, you've got like a bracket or some, you know, like spacer alignment type of a thing, and then another nut on this side. But this will go all the way down that stud, and your nut's going to be at the bottom. Some people, that's advantageous or required. For some people, it's an annoyance. This, where you see that step, I'd say it's almost halfway, basically about where my pinch point is, thumb and index finger, which is really hard to do with its little things with this thumb, really challenge it. But right there, there's that well. That's going to catch the nut. So a stud should, in theory, be able to run through there. Like if you had 5/8, 11, something or another, it's going to pass through that. But the nut itself that requires the 15/16 profile, it would be caught and captive. Again, not way up here at the top, but kind of a mid-well. And then this is like truly deep. It's like that nut's going to the bottom. There ain't nothing to stop it. Okay, so that's just an observation, something that may benefit you with Proto or may benefit you with Wright and be a deterrent here. It's important to denote those things. If I come in here, you're thinking like, oh, what is that? Satin, it's gotta be German. And yeah, it is. And it is not Gedore. It's a Stahlwille, all right? And you're thinking like, okay, so a 3/8 Stahlwille, maybe 19 mil. Notice anything different? This Wright, 15/16 3/8 drive, Stahlwille 1/2 inch drive, right? This is a 19. I always hate how they have that 51 over there. It just throws you off every time. But so if we've got a 19, what is that going to compare to? A 3/4. So we're going to grab the Proto. Really, really close there. But again, note on the Stahlwille, obviously 12-point, but it also has the well. It's roughly the same spot, maybe a little deeper than the Proto. Now, this Proto does have a well. You can kind of see it right. It's very hard to tell. You know what? That 15/16. Yeah, okay, we're good. It's the Wright that didn't. So, again, Wright versus Proto. You kind of have your captive fastener game going. Let's see here. Koken, since I love to compare, and we're doing deep right now. 3/4 Koken, 3/4 Proto. Koken is going to have the captive feature a bit higher up, but look at that height difference, right? So when you compare Proto to Koken, think of your set contents, break it down, go socket by socket, and then the Proto is a little longer, at least in 3/4. So again, obviously here, this is a little bit, this is like part Proto, part German, you know, like if that makes any sense. A little bit of America, a little bit of satin chrome. It's kind of best of both worlds, you be the judge. Right here, I grabbed a shallow Koken for comparison's sake. Will we see the same height disparity? No, they're basically identical. So what deviated between the two? Does Koken follow a slightly different set of standards or hybridized stuff versus Proto? I don't know, and I don't really care. They're both good sockets. Now, coming in here, I grabbed this, and I don't know what I would have had to buy this for, but it came from my Craftsman Rally box. And you're thinking like, oh, that's a nice looking socket. I remember when the Craftsmans had that. Here's the thing, this is not, it's 1 1/16", and it's Napa, and you're thinking like, oh, get that foreign junk out of here. This is US made, all right, NT1234. I don't know. I'm trying to think why I bought it, but I don't know who the OEM on this would have been. It's not quite finished out like a Wright, but it's also really old, and I've used it on stuff, and that might have, you know, contributed to it. But I don't know if it's like Wright or Proto, so I'm going to come in, and we're going to grab the 1 1/16", granted 12-point versus 6-point. Would Proto be the OEM behind this Napa socket? I don't know. If you know, I would guess that probably goes back to when I was like 15, 16, probably high school, I would think. Again, for the life of me, I don't know why. There's some reason I would have bought it. But if you know the OEM of like late 90s, early 2000s, Napa sockets made in America, let me know, just out of curiosity's sake. But I think that is all the comparisons I was going to do. Again, half-inch, I haven't got all these comparisons for you like we do with 3/8 drive. 3/8's my bread and butter. Half-inch, especially chrome, I mean, it's kind of limited, right? I guess I could have grabbed some Craftsman. These guys here, though, I do have to point them out. They're just the outcasts. Poor 1 3/16. If I stick with MTS here, they're just kind of chilling over there, you know. But speaking of Craftsman, let's do this. For years and years and years, this was my half-inch drive ratchet. If I needed to do anything with a half-inch drive socket, it was this ratchet. Have nice breaker bars, like old breaker bars. But if I needed a ratchet, this was it. All right, there was no German, there was no Japanese, there was nothing. It was just this guy right here. Craftsman USA, the good stuff, the quick release, came in the starter set that I've had probably since I was like 12 to 14, somewhere in that range if I had to guess. It is quick release, but let's come in and stick with 3/4. Okay, not quite what I'm used to anymore, but you know what? This will work, and it does get the job done, and that's what matters. But end play here is pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie, but you know what? Nostalgia, we'll give it a pass. All right. Coming in next, this is probably the newest half-inch I've got. The plan was to get the Axis 90s and then do the locking flex head and have it in the foam, and they never released that set. And when I was buying these, I didn't know the Max 90 was coming, but you probably guessed where this was going. That's right, the big long half-inch flex from Mac. Again, Stanley, Black & Decker, Mac and Proto. It got the usual kick, which is something that never used to bother me, and then like I got some stuff that doesn't do it, and I'm like, man, that's really annoying. This is going to get the job done as well. The kick out is not near as bad as with the Craftsman, but you know, hey, like I said, both of them going to do the job for me. Now, in terms of retention, this is not a quick release. That is good. That is really good. It's not like I don't have an Icon G2 half-inch anything, and I'm not sure I will. Who am I kidding? Probably on a big sale I'll wind up with one, but I don't have anything like that to compare to this, sadly. So, Mac, I'm more than satisfied with that. We're going to come in now. Koken, I did, when they released this, I just went ahead and sprung for the quick release. This has been a great ratchet, by the way, especially, it's super weird having a half-inch this smooth, you know? Very minimal play, and just eerily good finite performance for half-inch drive that I'm used to, you know, like 36 tooth stuff, old ratchets at work. Now, coming in, did not grab the HPS. Some of you know exactly where we're going. We're going to my favorite half-inch drive, which is right here. It is the Hazet 916 HP. Yeah, this is my workhorse one. Gonna plug on that 3/4. That would be the best fitment so far, in my opinion. Mac probably coming in second, especially considering it's not a quick release. But yeah, phenomenal fit and finish there. Let's actually check that. Same thing, 3/4 with a longer socket. That's really good, actually. We're gonna Kokenify that. I thought I grabbed a Stahlwille. I don't know what I've done. We'll have to go try to figure that out. Yeah, that Hazet fitment is legit. Again, that is not the HPS. Craftsman, this is probably going to be pretty bad. I'd say it's about the same, really. I mean, it looks exaggerated because of the stick out, the extension, comparative length versus a short, shallow socket. But it's not as bad as I thought it would be based on how bad this one was. I'd say it's basically maintained that, which is a good sign for consistency. The Mac, we'll go ahead and grab the axis. Throw this deep 3/4 on. Kicked out on me, sadly. That is a very good fitment too. A lot of times I've sort of been disappointed with Mac and Proto fitment, and that was maybe one of the best I've seen. I know I have the Gedore to do. Just give me a second, I'll be back. Alright. This is my least favorite Stahlwille Ratchet because the 3/8 and 1/4 are so good. Boom. 512, if I'm not mistaken. I will say their quick release is quite nice. That's pretty good fitment. But again, this ratchet is just totally different. And no, I've still never opened it up. I probably should. But, that's not great either, but hey, you know, like I said, all of it's going to work, all of it's going to get the job done. What we're going to do now is open this sucker up, alright? And what is this sucker? It's the little Gedore 6-point set that I've got. I got to find the 19. This will be a true apples to apples here, 19 and 3/4 for us. You can see it there. Again, basically, where did that go? 3/4 12 versus 19 versus Proto. You get the idea. Alright. We're going to throw that back. I'm going to actually grab this thing. This is worth noting. I think I've bought a couple of these, but this little guy right here, this Gedore, I think a 10-inch extension. Absolutely love the thing. Check this out. If I put this on, superior fit and finish fitment wise here. But wait, there's more. Think of the Koken wobble fix. You see that articulation there? I think it's like 10-ish degrees or so. Super cool. I had no idea Gedore had that until I got this set. And, last but not least, we do have this one. And I have to tell you, I've been very impressed by this ratchet. Again, I think this is one of the first, if not the first times this set has been shown. This is buttery smooth, that release switch. I'd say that's pretty good. Maybe not Hazet and Mac good, but probably just barely below them. Again, for a 1/2-inch ratchet, this thing is pretty daggum good. So, yeah, I've done a lot with this set. Again, I've never made a video on it, and it's just been chilling and serving me well all this time. And the whole thing, I kid you not, it's like 10 through 32. There are some skips in it. With the extension in a foam tray in an L-Boxx, I think I picked it up for like, I was sure when I got this, it was going to be like some third world knockoff. It's not. It's like, if it is, it's phenomenally good, and I wish I knew who was the OEM behind it, but pretty sure it's legit. That thing has been fantastic. So, yeah, this is what we did. This is what it looks like, and that is probably more than most normal people care to see, but that's why you're here on this channel, because you know that we go to these extremes and these lengths, and if I was going to come in and blindly buy this, I'd want to be like, well, hey, I just don't want to see the socket and have you say nice chrome, you know, fits the fastener. I want to kind of see, how does it compare? How does it fit on frickin', you know, heaven forbid, the sockets. Now, I'd been doing some cleaning over here, and of course, I can't find my bolts that are always sitting here for jigs. So I'm just gonna do this, which is a terrible example for ½ inch, but it is what it is. I mentioned, you know, maybe you need to just break something off. You think, oh, you got a little nylock there. Yeah, but take a close look. Does it look shiny in the middle? It's broken off. But you know what that means? It means our 7/16 will still fit. I just won't have a way to get it out. But right there, is it good fitment? Let's grab these Kibas. You can't tell what I'm trying to do, but I'm attempting to put pressure on that and see if it spins, and it's great fitment. So it is what it is there. There's usually 3/8 by 2 stainless bolts that live here because I use them all the time in a jig, and I don't know where they've gotten off to, unfortunately. This is tiny, and it looks metric. But we'll roll with it. If it's metric, it's also would be around 11 mil because it fits 7/16 quite well. So it's like one of those no-name screws. We'll check the deep well. Yeah, it's pretty good. You know what? What am I saying? We'll just go grab this 30 mil for frick's sake. 1 second. Boom! Let's do it. So we've checked the inch and 3/16, but oh, it's sitting over here. Silly me. It's the reject one, right? Again, that is a metric 100%. There's an 8.8 on that, so I know it's truly metric. It's 30 mil. That's phenomenal fitment. We'll do the same thing with this guy. Really good. Really, really good. So, yeah. Sorry we didn't have that. I should probably just like show up with some hardware here and just put it in like a tray so I always have it handy. For demonstration purposes. But you know what? I'm going to call that good. You're thinking like, man, you know, 100, well, what did you say the prices on that were? One with the discount, 136 for the shallow. That seems pretty legit, right? And then 250, you think, geez. But you got to remember, a lot of times, well, actually with the discount, it was 201. A lot of times you see a situation where if this was just say 50, you might expect the deeps to be 300-ish, right? That's a fair assessment. With so many brands, hence not Proto and Koken, the 150 here becomes like 520 here, and you're like, where did that come from? You know, you kind of think like, if I stacked 2 of these, that's basically that socket, is it not? And you're like, geez, that's insanely high. When you consider these are US made, and I'm very confident in them from personal experience, even though it was 136 and 201, all in on this, you're sitting at, what, we'll say 300 and, just shy of 340 bucks. We'll make it a small block Mopar, big block brand X killer, all right? 340 bucks, sub 340 being honest, for American-made half-inch drive, 6-point, shallow and deep. That's legit, all right? If we took that same 340 to the Mack truck, I don't know if I'd be able to get just the shallows, right? If we take that to the Snap-on guy, I know, you know, maybe we could pull something and we could ring in some of the shallows. I don't know if it'd be that big of a set, but we're sure not walking off with the deeps for that price. I want to say the deeps on Mack, because I do check, I want to say they were like 500-ish just for the deeps, and I'm not sure that it was as comprehensive of a set, but for the money that we spent, 340 bucks to have 3/8 to 1.25 inch, 15 pieces shallow, 15 pieces deep, 30 sockets into 340, considering these massive drive-in sizes on the back end of the set, it's a good buy. It truly is a great buy. Now again, Koken, their railed set is not going to be this comprehensive, but they do have the individual pieces available. So factor that in with your pricing and everything, and, you know, just do what makes you happy. If you got Proto Impact, you're like, man, I've always wanted to try Koken sockets, you're not going to go wrong. Just, you know, pull the trigger. If you want to try German shallows, I don't think you can go wrong, but beware if you love them and you want to build out a complete set with the deeps. Buckle up, because it's expensive. Proto and Koken, if you're like, man, those sockets were great, I want to get the deeps to complete the set. Spendy, but nothing like all the other kind of higher end quality brands, you know. So is what it is. But again, it is 1/2-inch drive. Again, if you're seeing this and you're like, yeah, I really want those, they look great. Keep in mind, if you're just starting, it all depends what you're doing. If you're like working on computers, you probably don't need to buy yourself 1/2-inch sockets, right? If you're doing tiny like sport bike stuff, you probably don't need mini 1/2-inch sockets. It might be nice for leverage in certain cases. You probably don't need SAE at all, right? But if you are at a point where you need this for your line of work, maybe it's industrial maintenance, you know, diesel, what have you, old school stuff, you can get by with impact for a very long time, and it's going to serve you very well. And again, there will be, I gave you that example of like, oh, hey, you know, this socket fits, but when I put my impact in there, like I can't get to the fastener. That's a real situation. It is not all the time by any stretch of the imagination. It's kind of like a limited thing, really. Again, it kind of depends what field you're in and what you're doing particularly. You might be within the same company. If you're over here in like final assembly, just like putting all the big pieces together, you might not have any space constraints. If you're a guy up the line, you know, and you don't do open air full assembly of finished components and you're doing finite assembly of one of the main components, you might never have open air to work with, and you need tight and compact and everything. But kind of, you know, get by. I always advocate, you know, to get good stuff that's going to last you a really long time. But don't overextend yourself, you know. And in the case of 1/2-inch drive, particularly 6-point, I think impact is honestly the better place to begin. But if you've saved up, you've built up, or you found a need, you know, if it's just like 2 fastener sizes, factor that in, maybe just buy the 2 sockets. But if there's legitimately situations you frequently run into where it's like, I've got to have a chrome socket. I've tried, you know, I had my dealer get me a thin wall to sample and it didn't fit. So he said, you don't have to buy it. And we tried the chrome and it fit. So I bought that. That's where these would come in. It's also nice, like if you've built it kind of like me, just slowly over time in life, you've kind of built things out. I'm just now doing this, right? Like I've had 1/2-inch Chromies and Craftsman and some others here and there, you know, like the Gedore set and whatnot. But in terms of like deeps, I've always been like, screw it. You know, this is affordable and extensions are cheap. Or, you know, hey, I've got a deep impact. This is kind of like a luxury, really. But again, for some of you, this may be vitally important and used all the time. So it's just really down to what you do professionally or what your hobbies are and what size of hardware you need to make those hobbies a reality or fun or fixable so it's fun again, right? But yeah, that's all I've got for you. Absolutely love one of the most satisfying things, whether you build a socket box or you fill out a pre-populated tray, it is incredibly satisfying. And it looks really nice. I can tell you this MTS tray, if you're like, man, mine looks different than that, there's like more black but it's still blue. This one was from Carlisle when they had like a huge Napa, if you will, when they had a huge sale and these were like dirt cheap. That's how you got the white numbers on them. But like I said, this is going to live here for now. If something changes with either like I get a great deal on Koken or the German companies, I'm like, wow, they did make 6-point. I'm an idiot. You know, something like that happens because I don't have a Gedore catalog. I will say that. I do not have Gedore catalog, but as best I know, they don't have SAE 6-point now, you know. So this is what I did. I'm content with it. I'm happy. I've kind of got a tentative plan for that Gedore set. Again, I will say these sockets are really good. And again, ironically, that dirt cheap $80 unfathomably good deal set is kind of where I was like, whoa, you know, like these are nice. But yeah, this is tried and true and known commodities for me, and it's at home, and it will be at home at work if it comes to that. So I'm going to leave it at that. It is getting hot in here. I'm going to, oh geez, I had no idea it was this late. I'm going to go make a sandwich so I'm not eating it like midnight, and hopefully I haven't missed the end of the game. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching. If you have not subscribed, I encourage you to do so. If you do that, you ring the bell, you jump your charger across the creek, you crash down, and you decide, hey, today's the day I'm going to buy 1/2-inch drive 6-point chrome sockets. YouTube just might notify you. We got new videos every Wednesday and Saturday, 9 a.m. Texas time. As always, your thoughts and opinions appreciated, particularly if you want to factor in and say, hey, you know, this is what I did for 1/2-inch deep, or just stick to the impacts and then fill it out like this guy suggested. Or if you're like, man, you should have gone this route, or, you know, whatever your thoughts, feel free to leave them down below. Help people out, that is the end goal. But I'm happy, I'm hot, I'm kind of hungry. I'm going to go take care of that. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Most importantly, I hope I catch you back here for more from the shop.